Welcome back to DWeb Decoded, a podcast by Filecoin Foundation that explores the intersection of blockchain and the data economy. I'm your host, Aaron Stanley, and today I'm joined by Sarah Thiam, who's a developer advocate and team lead at FIL-B, which is a public goods developer experience team working across the Filecoin ecosystem. Sarah, it's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, Aaron, thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
So Sarah, I'm really excited to chat with you today to learn more about what you're doing with FIL-B and how you're empowering developers and builders in the Filecoin network. And to get started, I'd love for you to tell us a bit just quickly about yourself and also your journey in the protocol labs and Filecoin world.
Yeah, so happy to talk about FIL-B. FIL-B stands for it's FIL-Builder, so it stands for FIL-B Builders. We actually have a full community behind it. We initially started as a public goods team for Filecoin. We were actually, and I'll share a little bit of my history later on, but right now we are supporting different initiatives across developer experience in the Filecoin ecosystem for the main Filecoin team as well as for teams that are building on Filecoin. So it's been really fun building the entire community and stitching them across different technologies and having them try out different parts of the stack across the entire Filecoin ecosystem. So a little bit about the history of FIL-B and how we came to be. So I joined Protocol Labs about 2.5 years ago. I was actually really, really privileged to be invited to be part of the team that was pre-mainnet launch for the Filecoin virtual machine. So for those of you who are newer to the Filecoin virtual machine, Filecoin was launched way back, and then we had a new launch of the virtual machine, which would then allow developers to build dApps on top of Filecoin and run transactions and do all the fun things that you can do with smart contracts. So that was a really big push in 2023. We launched that, and ever since then we have it's been like 2 awesome years of just working with the Filecoin virtual machine community and all the different builders that are coming in. So we worked as part of the team for a long time, myself and another teammate of mine, and then Protocol Labs, had a new vision of branching out to many different entities and different teams that would then kind of supercharge the ecosystem with like new initiatives and new products and all of that. So as part of that, we also became an entity on our own. So we are currently a public goods team that is helping guide along people with their knowledge of Filecoin protocol, as well as using the Filecoin virtual machine, how to build dApps. We've been building a lot of documentation and technical resources, and also a ton of community building, just making sure that on socials and in IRL events, and I can talk a little bit more about that later on, we are meeting them and making sure builders feel engaged with the Filecoin ecosystem. So yeah, it's been really fun. We have, if you're interested, we're on the Twitter called x.com/FILBuilders, and you can find all the cool activities there.
That's great. And you've been involved in a number of these major projects in kind of the Filecoin Protocol Labs world, like the Thiam. I know you're involved in some of the interplanetary consensus project as well. I mean, maybe just to kind of follow up on what you're saying before, but what have you found really inspirational or exciting about working on these types of projects, and maybe more generally just working in the Filecoin ecosystem more broadly?
So I think it's really interesting is Filecoin is, the goal is really to bring humanities data on it being stored in a decentralized network. So when we're dealing with public data, there are a lot of interesting use cases that come up. We have some really cool innovations as well, things like Data DAOs. That was something that we had experimented with back in 2023. So really the concept of Data DAO is that you can have, as a community, if you have public data that you really want to get stored and preserved for a long time, and you want to be able to maintain and control and own your data end to end as a community, you can have a DAO that allows you to, either set conditions for membership or set conditions for people to upload to be able to upload their data. And then as a DAO, you can actually have a treasury that you control, and this is all done by a smart contract, so it's all done in a trustless manner that you can control and allow the treasury to continue to perpetuate the storage of your data. So for example, if you, as a community, say you want to store this data set, or you want to store a collection of cat pictures, right? You could have different community members either participate to a certain extent, so you can verify them as a credible community member, allow them to upload their data, and then have that data set continuously managed. If you're storing it for 3 months, but then after 3 months, the payment for the storage has run out, you can always, as a community, vote on whether you want to extend the duration of that storage and maybe store it for a year. So effectively, you could store your data for you could have your cat pictures live on forever, right? I mean, in theory. So data DAOs are really interesting concepts. So that was one really cool innovation. Real world use cases, we had some teams that proposed how we could store users' credit card data and they could actually own that data end to end. So that has been a really interesting side of experiments for the Filecoin ecosystem. On top of that, I think just being able to upload and preserve large data sets, and also to think about, now that we're in the AI side of things, it has been it has come up as a really, really big topic to talk about public data and how you are taking care of your data that then fuel these AI models. So if you think about it all, the foundation of AI is really the kind of data that you have, whether your AI model is going to have certain biases or not is also due to what kind of data is being pumped into that whole cycle. So thinking about how you can actually control that data, or verify where the data is coming from, or have transparency and traceability in your AI model processes is going to be really important. So that has also brought Filecoin back into really strong relevance. And I think that is something that, I can talk on for ages, but that's something that I've been really excited about in the Filecoin space too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's obviously a super kind of zeitgeisty, topical theme right now. Is this? It's just really made. I think it's really made Filecoin, a relevant player. And again, the original value proposition of Filecoin has become much more relevant as we've seen, just the rapid advancement of these AI tools and folks building with these things and some of the surrounding questions that have been raised. Yeah, maybe we can dive into that later if we have some time. But that's a super interesting, relevant topic. Maybe just talking about kind of the bread and butter of FIL-B, maybe just kind of tell us what the day-to-day looks like. What are maybe some of your primary strategies for trying to reach new developers and builders? Maybe walk us through what does kind of maybe the onboarding experience look like? What does kind of the community experience look like right now? Maybe just give us some color around how that all works.
Yeah. So onboarding wise, there are things that I classify as developer experience or developer advocate hygiene. So things like documentation and having your starter kits and all of that are what I consider hygiene. So there's a lot in their onboarding experience that we're constantly testing and improving over time. Filecoin documentation it's non-trivial. It's a really huge resource that has really deep knowledge, and it could effectively be an entire curriculum for a degree. Filecoin University, right? So there's a lot of improvements that we're making to that over time, and also making sure that we allow a large chunk of that data to sit there. So that is definitely a huge part of the onboarding experience. We've also recently started looking at how we can use AI to supercharge our documentation. So allowing we're working with cookbook.dev to see how we can allow for AI search engines on your documentation, which is a very easy lift, and it makes the developer experience so much better. We're also looking at working with Filecoin Foundation to look at certain AI assistants that can help to track the differences between the GitHub repos and the documentation and make sure that our docs are always up to date. So there's a lot of work being done in that space. On the technical resource space, for a long time, we've had a bunch of starter kits and demos. But of course, over time, those get outdated too. So we've been doing a huge refresh around the different starter kits and that exist on Filecoin. And this mostly has to do with DApp and smart contract development, because that's where builders actually meet Filecoin. And it's not just the protocols and the storage providers that are participants of the Filecoin ecosystem, but now you have builders as well. So we have I think in the past, last year, we launched FIL-Frame, which is a DApp starter kit. We saw how in many hackathons, people are having a lot of traction and were finding the Scaffold ETH kit to be super useful, especially if you're developing on Ethereum. And so that TLDR allows you to launch your DApp very, very quickly onto Ethereum, and you can you can rip out chunks and edit it and configure it how you want. So similarly, we built FIL-Frame, and what the intent of that is to do is to be able to launch your DApp very quickly onto Filecoin virtual machine, which is EVM compatible, but also has certain nuances that, as a developer, you might run into them and be like, hey, this isn't what I'm used to, right? But we take care of that in the FIL-Frame DApp starter kit. So we have that, and the plan is to slowly extend that over time and upgrade it, and add different, new integrations that are coming to Filecoin into that. So for example, we have a branch that is focused on the different on-ramps that are working in Filecoin. And storage on-ramps are basically like these businesses or services that have been built up on top of Filecoin that make it so much easier for you to store your data. So Lighthouse, Storager, and Akave are some really good examples of on-ramps, and they are optimized for different kinds of storage use cases, right? And they provide really easy APIs and SDKs and all of that. So all of that goodness, we've taken it and put it as part of the FIL-Frame starter kit, so you can easily, go onto that branch instead and then launch your dApp using your preferred on-ramp. Aside from on-ramps, we've also added in things like different Oracle integrations that we have. So like we have PIS, we have Teller, we've been adding that in so that if you want to build additional functionality on your storage dApp, and it's not just storage, which most of the time it isn't, you can also add the new functionality that you're used to in, so for example, all these different tools I just mentioned are like really popular outside of Filecoin. So what we want to do is to make that experience very similar on Filecoin, and we've put it all within the starter kit, and we'll continue to upgrade that over time. So FIL-Frame is really awesome. I think we are looking at phase 2 right now. There's a lot more that we'll be launching this Friday actually in Denver. So definitely look forward to that. So I know it's a very long answer to your initial question, but like we have documentation, we have technical starter kits. And then of course we also have community. So the Phil Builder community is really the technical builder community of Filecoin. We have like a good amount of people just constantly building. I think since we launched in 2023, the community has like about, honestly, thousands, actively building at any one time, probably 1,000 or so. And in the chat, we always have builders coming up with new projects. So that community has been growing. We've rebranded it from the FEM community to the Phil Builder community in the past year or so. And that has been going really, really well. So on these different fronts are like different ways that we bring devs on board to Filecoin. And I can share a lot more about the Orbit community as well and like partnerships that we're doing there. But yeah, I will share that for now.
No, that's super helpful, and it's really like a multi-pronged approach, right? That you have to take to everything from just making sure the documentation is updated, because obviously nobody wants to be building with documentation that's out of date, and then they're like, I can't figure this out because it's inaccurate. So keeping this stuff maintained and up to date is no small task, and then. And incorporating all this tooling that folks might already be used to dealing with, like using Pith and using these other types of things in other ecosystems, and then making sure that that's an easy transition essentially, or they don't have to like kind of relearn a whole new like tool set essentially to build on top of Filecoin. I'd be interested to hear like maybe what have you seen maybe in the last 6 months or so, or 12 months, like. What have you seen as maybe some examples of just like really interesting kind of concepts or dApps or concepts for dApps that people have in your community have maybe come up with or have deployed, on Filecoin? Are there any examples that maybe come to mind of like, oh wow, this is really really great idea, or an idea that has kind of come to fruition that's really making a positive impact in the community right now?
I think that I think in Filecoin land. To be honest, like as a developer, Filecoin is not the easiest to get around. It's a very heavily like fortified protocol, and there are many different parts that you can learn, right? And like combine Filecoin and IPFS, which is, and largely the difference is Filecoin is a blockchain protocol that secures or gives guarantee that your data is going to be stored for a long time and has like incentives to make sure people do so, versus IPFS, which is a peer-to-peer network, and you can pin your data. And we understand IPFS is lightweight and very easy to use, but longevity of data and guarantee that your data will sit there for a long time is also hard in the IPFS case. So across IPFS and Filecoin, there's a lot to absorb, and most of the time builders leverage both and make them complement each other in building that dApp. There is one project that has been building, and I would definitely give like kudos to that project for building for such a long time. They've been in the Filecoin ecosystem since we launched the FBM, and it's been like about it's about 2 years, 2.5 years now. And so they've been building a lot, and I think it's gotten to a point where it's very, very mature. So this project is called eStore, E-S-T-O-R-E, eStore, Easy Store. And it's built by this builder called Shashank, right? And so Shashank has like really grown in the Filecoin ecosystem from coming in as a builder to test out FEM, and then gotten to a point where he's now helping out and making open source contributions to the Filecoin protocol itself, which is low level. And really, not easy to understand. And he's gotten to that point and has become very credible in the space. And so over time, and he has always been working on his project eStore since day one. And what eStore essentially is meant to be an on-ramp, to Filecoin. And I explained the concept of on-ramps earlier on, which is giving a really easy way for you to store your data. Today, he's gotten to a point where it's like you could essentially drag a file of your folder on your desktop, and drop it into a very simple interface, and that will allow it to be stored in a deal in Filecoin. And you will get your deal ID back for your data that is verified to be stored onto Filecoin and stored by one of the storage providers.
That's amazing.
That sounds simple. Yeah, it's amazing, right? And he just showed us a POC last week, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. Sounds simple, but it's like really not, right? Because and this is the thing with decentralized networks too. It's like we want to get to a point where we can fully own, every part of this infrastructure end to end. Or no one single entity is in charge of it. But that also comes at a trade-off cost of there are going to be responsibilities that the user needs to take on, or maybe the UX is not the most seamless to begin with. So what Shashank has built is non-trivial for sure, because you are dealing with things like, on Filecoin as well, we have a minimum capacity of 32 GB sectors, which means that data to be stored, to be incentivized to be taken up by a storage provider to store will require to be a minimum of 32 gigs. Now, what Shashank has done here is that you can actually pull up a monkey JPEG from your folder on your desktop, which could be like as small as, 2 MB or something, right? Like really, really small. And it can easily become part of a sector and give you back the deal ID. That requires a whole process of data aggregation in the middle and data buffering. So data buffering meaning that your file is getting stored on a buffer somewhere that maybe an IPFS node that your storage provider can then pick up. And also requires that once whatever metadata that JPEG represents, it has to go through a process of data aggregation that it then gets stored as part of a larger 32 GB sector for the storage provider to then receive as a 32 GB sector for them to collect and store as a deal ID. And while you do all of that process, which is going to take some time, maybe usually in a 24-hour to 48-hour window, you as the user will want to be able to store your data, but then also retrieve it at any point of time. So it's like, I dragged and dropped my monkey JPEG and I want to pull it back in a minute to check that it's there. It also requires the data to sit on maybe an IPFS node that you can easily retrieve in the meanwhile before it gets stored for in archival storage on Filecoin. So that in itself, imagine all of that explained, just digesting that concept, but then also figuring it out in code. And so he has effectively done that, and that he's also built many, many different things for the Filecoin ecosystem in the past 2 years. So yeah, that is one really good builder that I would definitely shout out.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, and it's. I mean, people outside of Filecoin world just assume that that's a simple thing to do, right? Because sometimes people are like, well, how come I don't have this kind of Dropbox experience with Filecoin where I can just drag and drop it, into a folder, and that it's like, well, you realize what goes into that, right? It's not a simple process. So it's a great example, and it's great that we're getting to the point now where these types of applications or these types of just kind of easy use cases are becoming viable. So that's incredible. That's great to hear. I would love to maybe learn a bit more about how are you guys what's your kind of approach for onboarding new or finding new developers or onboarding new developers. I know, we still do some work with hackathons. We're still doing, we have the Orbit community. You guys are doing meetups and community stuff. What's maybe the, I don't know if recruiting isn't necessarily the right word for it, but how are you kind of trying to find new folks and sort of get new folks interested in joining?
Yeah, there are so many answers to that question that I am yeah, okay, so bear with me, but there are many different ways that we're reaching out to builders, right? And I think let's start with what kind of builder is best suited for the Filecoin ecosystem. It's not, I would say storage is fundamental and it's really, really important, but it's also not the most sexy. And I think we can all agree on that, and that's fine. But it's really awesome I think the kind of builders that we attract are builders that are really deep problem solvers, and they really want to get to the root of the problem, and they truly care about the fundamentals or the infra. I mean, there are many fundamentals to every topic out there, but the fundamentals of blockchain, which are blockchain infra, right? And so if you really care about that, and you really care about the principles of data being a public good, as in being able to own your data end to end and not having other entities control it or have ownership of it, especially in this time where privacy is a really big topic. So these are the first principal builders that like often come to the Filecoin ecosystem and can really find a really good fit. So that is the premise. There are various ways that we go out to like engage different builders, right? And so we definitely still do a ton of hackathons. Like we are also looking at putting out more infra-focused problem statements, and even if it's to do with AI, like how can you think about back to the fundamental level of the data, even being part of the AI model. How do you think about that as opposed to thinking more on the AI agent front, right? So we've been setting a lot more problem statements in that space, and that's we're also running a lot of hackathons with eGlobal and Code, and these are really great partners for us to work with. So we've been bringing in builders to there, and so I think hackathons typically for Filecoin, month-long hackathons are a really good format because it takes time to understand Filecoin and understand at a deep level enough that you can actually have really innovative use cases come out of it. So that's one way that we're bringing in builders. We also have a lot of community events. So I mentioned earlier on with like how FIL Builders is working with Orbit. First off, FIL Builders is doing a lot more virtual coding challenges that run on a quarterly basis. So we ran one really successfully. We had like 200 participants in December. The recent one that we had has like 250 participants. So it's been growing over time. And these allow devs to come in and learn Filecoin from scratch, and then over a course of about 2 weeks, get to a point where they can digest a ton of information and then have mentorship from the FIL-B team to build out a DApp, right? And just try it out. And so if that gets them to a point where then they are ready to participate in a hackathon, that's great. If not, then they have some awesome learnings to take away with them. So that's what we're doing on the online front. On the social side of things, so coding challenges. And then we're also working with Orbit to turn all these social challenges into like Orbit local meetup events. So we have an awesome community of Orbit ambassadors, and I think all the ambassadors are always super excited to have like maybe like contents or events in a box that they can take away and like add on their own spin on it, add on their own knowledge to it, and then produce it as a local meetup so that they can engage people in person and build a community of really passionate devs in their area. And so we're doing a lot more of that with like taking what we're giving with the social coding challenges to transform that into a curriculum that you can run on the ground with your local chapters. And so we're talking to a lot of Orbit ambassadors on how that can spread out across the globe. So that's a bunch of stuff that we're doing there too, and we're very excited for that to kick off this year. So I covered hackathons and I covered community and social challenges. And then, of course, we also have the PL Dev Guild. So Protocol Labs Dev Guild is a new initiative that launched last year. That is for devs that, either through these more upstream like hackathons, community events, and coding challenges, you then get deeper into Filecoin and you're like, wow, now I really want to go deep into Filecoin and I really want to contribute and be part of projects and maybe do open source contributions. We have the Protocol Labs Dev Guild, which is a kind of like a dev rewards program. So you come on, you get selected, and then you come on as a cohort for about a month, and you work with these open source technologies that are part of the Filecoin stack. So things like IPFS, things like Filecoin Virtual Machine, Lotus, like all these different, Lotus is the node implementation for Filecoin. And so all these different technologies will then open up to devs to come in and contribute to that, and they actually do get rewards for it at the end of the month. It also helps with their portfolio, and then also some of them have actually gotten hired into the ecosystem as well. So I think that if you think of the journey from like meeting Filecoin when you know nothing and you're like, I'm excited to get into this, to like bringing devs down the path to get more and more into the ecosystem and improve their skills, and then to a point where they can actually be making open source contributions and actually like having a hand in contributing to like this future of good open source technology for like public data. So that's like really the journey for devs. There are a lot more initiatives along the way and like really, really fun stuff, but like at the core of it, that's how we're bringing devs onto Filecoin.
No, thank you for that. That's very thorough. And congrats for doing all of that. I mean, with I know you guys have a small team over there, a relatively small team compared to the amount of work you're doing, that's great. I'd be curious to know a bit more about like, I mean, I kind of see you guys as sort of like the the triage essentially in the ecosystem of like, okay, there's you have like this pool of builders who are interested, who are learning or interested in doing stuff, and then there's teams in the ecosystem that are also like building and deploying, and they, presumably in need of talent. You have on the other side, you have builders who are maybe looking to like link up with another project. Maybe talk a bit about just kind of like that role that you play in the ecosystem right now of kind of perhaps being this triage between the talent and then the teams that are in search of talent.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in that space to unpack. Like it's talent, but then talent has different preferences on how they want to contribute. So some would be like, I am super down to like join the team. Like today it's that as like a full-time role. And then there are like talent that's like, hey, I want to be a really strong open source contributor in the Web3 space. And, Filecoin is going to be one ecosystem that I'm involved with, but also I think multi-chain is a very big topic. And, I think we need to understand that devs want to be part of the multi-chain future and want to have like understanding across different chains as well. So there are devs that don't necessarily want to be part of a certain ecosystem and want to like float around and like have learnings too. And then there are devs that are just like, I just want to do this for fun. Like I just want to hack. And like after I'm done hacking, I'm just going to chill and then come back at the next hack, right? And so it really depends on what they're looking for. I think my team, as much as possible, I think it's very important in Web3. And, I think it comes along with like the bigger philosophy that Web3 is a very new way, a new internet, right? And a very new way of internet culture being, of internet community being, what it is. And so we have to keep a really open mind to the different kinds of like devs that reach out to us. I think the best thing that we can really do, that we are doing, is to just be around and be available to devs. We have people reaching out with all different kinds of requests all the time. And, not on the talent side, but also on the team side. And I think it's really important, not just for us, but like, and in no way are we like the bottleneck, but like everyone in the PL ecosystem, the Filecoin ecosystem, the larger Web3 ecosystem, to just be super open to opportunities and have an open mind. So, and being connected, right? And listening to what people are actually looking out for. And then and also being super opportunistic. So once you think like, hey, this would be a really great match, like we could definitely connect them. Like we had a builder that came in and, I met him in Paris like 2 years ago, or a year ago. And like, he has just constantly been hacking. And like, he graduated recently. And I was like, why don't you come for the Filecoin Hacker House? He came by and then he met a team that was just so happens to be looking for a software engineer. And they were like, they hacked with him for a week and they got along really well. And now he's part of that team. And like, just thinking of the journey like that, right? Or like, even on my team, like I had a builder that when we launched FBM, this guy was like super into writing tutorials and he was just so fast and he just had so much fun writing fun stories with a technical tutorial attached to it. And I was like, I think he'd be really great for like doing dev advocacy work in the ecosystem. And now he's part of my team. So I think it's just keeping an open mind to how people can kind of match their skills across. We also, like I mentioned, eStore earlier on, like that builder himself is, part of various projects and he's contributing to these various projects and getting funding for that from different sources. But his passion is really just in building. He's like, I don't want to like be part of a team necessarily right now at this point. I just want to be able to build every single day. And so connecting him to different projects and different opportunities that come up has been really effective so far for him. So that's kind of like the role that we're playing today. Yeah.
No, that's great. That makes a lot of sense, right? Because in Web3, there's so many different, or in any open source community for that matter, you have all these different kind of profiles of contributors, right? You have people that want to have like kind of, a full-time job. There's people that are just doing it for fun. There's people that want to kind of dabble in various ecosystems and just kind of develop their skill set across like multi-chains, et cetera. And then, so it's kind of like, it's a balance of like, okay, trying to figure out what this person's priorities are and maybe how can we kind of best meet them where they're at or what their given interests are.
Yeah. And like, I think one other point to add there is just like, you'd be surprised like how long a way can go for builders to just be building every single day. Like I would say to any builder out there that's watching this, there are a ton of ecosystems and chains who are putting out many, many different programs for like rewards, retro PGF, pro PGF, grants and all of that. Like you'd be surprised at how long a way a dev can go to build up their GitHub portfolio and just learn and constantly be building without actually having to join a team ever really in Web3. And I think that's the really cool part about Web3 is that it is revolutionizing what it means to like have a job or have a career, like, so I think that's a really fun part of it.
Yeah, exactly. It allows kind of a decoupling essentially. You're not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to be like employed by somebody to be able to make a living by contributing, right? Well, maybe to wrap up here, I would love to maybe just learn about your the team's like plans and priorities for the rest of 2025. And we can also talk a bit about the Code and Corgi meetup that you got, this sort of series of meetups that you guys have been doing. You're doing one in Denver this week, and then you also did one in Bangkok as well. If we can talk a bit about that, it's kind of a fun, fun inspiration from the popular Filecoin Corgi mascot, which if you've been to a Filecoin event, you've probably seen those. But maybe just talk a bit about that, and then like what your priorities are for the rest of the year.
Yeah, so Code and Corgi so I mentioned earlier around how we are doing like social challenges and then also expanding that content to the Orbit community to do locally. We think so Code and Corgi has been like the brand name for a lot of that content, and that also extends into having an IRL event at big conference week. So right now we're in East Denver, and on Friday we're going to have a Code and Corgi event. It is done in partnership with the Orbit community, the Filecoin Orbit community and the ambassadors on the ground. Shout out to Alex and Logan, who have been awesome. And it's also done in collaboration with Filecoin Foundation, as well as many other teams in the Filecoin ecosystem that we're inviting to be a part of it. So we have like Phil Oz, PLFIF, Sorachan, and like a lot more. So it's going to be an awesome community event. We're going to have a workshop at the start to run people to fill frame, so that if you're new to Filecoin, you can kind of get started, get some hands-on, ship some stuff. And then once that's done, we're going to go into the main event, and we're going to have a ton of project updates. I think there are like 15 different teams coming to do a 5-minute update of what they've been building. Oh, wow. And I think the cool thing is they're all building on Filecoin or have plans to build with Filecoin. And so they're going to give a huge project update on what the technical roadmaps are going to be. And so it'll be really cool to see all the innovation in the space. And then we're going to open it up for everyone to just kind of, talk to each other and just chill a little bit and pull the community together. So that's going to happen on Friday, the 28th from 4 p.m. onwards. We are a little at max capacity right now, but if you're interested, sign up or shoot us a message, and we'll, come by, and we'll definitely let people in. And we'll also be giving out corgis, because it's called Code and Corgis. We'll be giving out a special edition Denver Corgi at the event. So come by and collect your plushie if you're interested.
Awesome. And then maybe just any other things we should be looking forward to from FIL-B over the rest of the year before we wrap up here?
Yeah. So I think FIL-B, on our end, I think definitely if you are keen to be an Orbit ambassador, you're in a certain local community, whether you're in a university or just in the local community space, and a bunch of devs that would be interested in these things, or you want to run a meetup, reach out to the Orbit community and join. If you're an Orbit ambassador, we'll definitely be working very closely with you to run these technical sessions in your area, to get devs to skill up and then participate in hackathons that are coming up. We also have a really cool AI hackathon. I think AI hackathon coming up in March. So that starts March 14th. We'll be partnering with Encode to run the Filecoin AI Blueprints hackathon. We're going to have a ton of partners joining, and we're going to open it up to see people deploy AI agents on Filecoin, and also think about how data can be the foundation to a lot of the AI models and AI compute in running as a use case. So there's going to be a lot of the problem statements there. So look out for that if you're interested. If you've been building in the AI space and you want to get a little bit deeper, come by our hackathon. Trust me, it's going to be geeky. It's going to run for a month, and we'll have a ton of mentors to help you out. So that'll be coming up as well. And then I think another big piece that we're working on is working very closely with the FIL-OS team around enabling Filecoin web services. So that is a very new innovation that is coming to the Filecoin ecosystem sometime this year. FIL-B is going to be working a lot on the tooling so that we can enable a new batch and a new profile of builders to be participating in Filecoin web services. But the goal is really that it will allow a lot more options and technical methods that are tools that people can use to build to build up the storage solution on Filecoin, and also enable a lot more crossing and the operability for Filecoin storage to happen. So that's going to be coming out later in the year. I think that's the really heavy part that we're excited about, the very deep technical part that we're excited about. So that's going to be a lot more. I can go on and on, but that's TLDR on top things that we're looking out for this year.
Amazing. Yeah, well, that's a lot that you guys are shouldering right now. So best of luck, and congratulations on all the successes so far, and wishing you the best of luck here in 2025. How can folks find you or learn more about FIL-B?
You can log on to Twitter, see us there. We're x.com/FIL Builders, so FIL and then Builders with an S at the end. Follow there for a lot more updates on what's coming up. And yeah, you can get in touch with the team there and also check out our blogs from just the Twitter itself.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation, learning about you and also about FIL Builders and what you guys are doing there. So really, really great. Appreciate your time. And thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time on DWeb Decoded.
Thank you.